Water is magical. I like the way the light reflects across water. It doesn't even have to be a sunset. The surface bounces rays as it drifts and shifts, making the light dance and move in the ripples. What are memories you have involving bodies of water? My sister and I used to draw boats on the blacktop driveway. We had rubber on the ends of our fishing rods instead of hooks and would practice casting on our water. We may have hopped along chalk lily pads too. This area is called Lake Country, and I grew up going out on our boat on weekdays after work and school. I could help get it out of the garage and packed, ready for Dad to hitch it to the car when he got home. One of the launches requires a careful ride down a shallow river to get to the full lake. From the pier, there is a dam where a different lake spills over from a much higher elevation. It took me many years to actually think about the words Lake Country instead of just being a full name that flowed together. Now I accidentally mistype it and get it mixed up with Lake County in the next state. Once we got out there, we'd have water fights by digging my feet into the bottom of the inner tube, and we'd take a lap to see what properties were for sale. There's still a binder on my dad's shelf with the old newspaper clippings of possible rentals or real estate options with notes of frontage and home details. There were no internet alerts available. One of the benefits of staying overnight at summer camp was the opportunity to see other parts of the property when the other campers had gone home for the evening or hadn't yet arrived the following day. There were hikes around the man-made pond where you'd see it through the trees from a different point of view. Usually, you just saw the roped-off, trucked-in sand portion the lifeguards patrolled. Being there off hours also allowed for some short-distance canoeing outside the typical boundary. The meandering river could be crossed in multiple locations, from the boardwalks, across the wetlands, to the seemingly never-ending hike up the hill to another whole section of the camp. Then there was the time we were supposed to practice our orienteering and sleuthing skills. That sent one group off into the tall grassy trails, and they arrived back way after lunchtime. However, my group contained one of the director's daughters, and she recognized that we were probably supposed to locate the canoe launch. Our adventure was much shorter and more direct, and we actually scouted the location that was intended. Being near the water and next to the campfire at the close of the day is an experience everyone should try at least once. We used to pack up the car with a big bag of popcorn and drive to the park and ride off the highway. From there, you could sit on the hood of the car out of the back of the station wagon and see the fireworks from the surrounding lakes above the treetops. I guess I have no idea if we did that more than 1 year or not, but it's a fun memory, especially now that the intersection was completely reworked and the lot is gone. 2 of us high schoolers stopped by a 4th of July celebration and ended up on a boat of adults for fireworks time. They were also dropping off people with chairs to sit out on the sandbars and were trying to convince my friend and I to scoot off the boat. People pleaser me probably would have accommodated, but my friend held firm and we squeezed together and stayed put, which was a good decision as those out on the water had to wait for them to go back out later and round them up in the dark. These beautiful pieces are created with inks and alcohol, which evaporates and leaves the pigment behind. I saw other artists online working with alcohol ink from markers. They'd blend it in an isopropyl alcohol and blow it around their paper. Other projects led me to Yubo synthetic paper. My family gifted me bottles of ink and paper and set me up with a bottle of alcohol and a heat gun, but I was so busy working on other things, the supplies sat and sat. All 3 of them were engrossed in drawing with alcohol ink markers and bought a set of refills for those, along with mixed media paper and how to draw books. We'd watch an artist maker from Australia to see what he'd create next. It's a little tricky because of the alcohol as it evaporates, but we have a vent hood for soldering in the basement, so my excuses were running thin. Eventually, I was determined to unearth my birthday gifts and give them a try outside. There's always that blank canvas hesitation when getting started, but I moved the liquid around and experimented to learn how it behaved on the page and how to manipulate it with the heat, and how to overcome the wind and raindrops that invaded my workspace. The dog and I worked in the garage sometimes instead of the back patio table. I'd scan my art and manipulate the colors or levels or edit out some of the places I felt were flaws. The first ones were often one color, and I ended up with some hard lines depending upon how it dried. Later I tried canvas, and the inks behaved differently on this surface. Adding multiple colors and watching how they mixed and sometimes blended well and other times not so much, I created 6 pieces and picked 2 to enter in an exhibition at a gallery. I am often listening to music or podcasts or working through different scenarios and encounters in my mind. As a recovering perfectionist and one who wants control and to know all the things, this flowy medium is a surprise to me. I have to accept the swirls and squiggles that sneak out from under the heat tool, or when I like the progress and then add too dark of ink over the top, or when the ink doesn't dissolve all the way into the alcohol and leaves dark flecks, or when there isn't quite enough alcohol in the bottle and air gets in the tube, leaving droplets over a section I thought was completed. This is good for me.